Here's an update on the beach tank. I'll give some thoughts and observations I have of the tank as we go, and if you guys have input, let me know. So I recently opened up this area. There was a big green Monty cap. This coral back here, about 2 to 3 feet across, that sat up here, and the light went out and started losing its color, and it hasn't rebounded. Usually when that happens, all the Monties in the tank will lose their color, and if something's wrong, like salinity or alkalinity or whatever. But since it's only that one coral, I'm not really sure what's going on. So anyways, I moved this turbinaria up front to give it a little more prominent role. It's kind of an ugly coral, but it's a legacy coral here. And added a new Gigas clam in, and you can see one of the Heniochus diaphragms picking on it. They're kind of dicks to the clams, but sometimes even just moving them a little farther back in the tank will prevent the butterflyfish from nipping on them. If they're close to the window where they want to hang out, then they'll nip more. But I want to give this Gigas a nice front and center view, so hopefully they'll leave it alone for a little bit. You can see the emperor angel nipping on it there. That's unusual behavior, but I just added it today. It's normally a well-behaved fish, so we'll see. Might have to get moved or pulled later on today, but this one's also interesting in that it's kind of hard to see, but it doesn't have the normal grooves and ridges in the shell, and it's shaped more like a banana, but it's a little difficult to tell right now, but it has a weird shape to the shell. That's an aquaculture ORA clam. This big Pocillopora was moved from one of our other live coral exhibits recently. I don't know, it's probably about, again, 2 to 3 feet across, somewhere in that range. Really heavy coral, and it's done well. You can see there's kind of some white spots on top. That's some of the nipping that the parrotfish does. There's a spotted parrotfish in here, Ketoscarus ocellatus. It's one of my favorite fish in the tank, even though it may be one of the uglier ones, and I just like that it's not normally kept with corals, and gives it a more realistic, natural feel, in my opinion. It's kind of a camera shy fish, so we'll see. Oh, there it is, nipping on the Monty back there. It really prefers dead skeleton over live tissue, but it does nip live tissue every once in a while. All this dead skeleton here that's been eaten away. There's a big chunk, like four or so inches eaten out. Those big shelves that have fallen down. It really starts at the bottom and then works its way up, typically. So it collapsed, that parrotfish collapsed this section of reef a while back. There were some big Monty caps here, and it ate them out from underneath, and then been working on redoing it, but I just threw this big Anthelia patch over here to make room for that Gigas clam. There's the parrotfish. Plants are doing all right. Some bromeliads and staghorn fern. For the vivarium people, this is Zoe neoregelia, and the color is just amazing under the metal halide lighting. Some of the other bromeliads are pupping out back there. They don't look their best right now, but the pups are kind of hidden. That bird's nest fern is starting to take off too, so we'll see how big it gets. These mangroves on this side of the tank are doing really well. I've been splashing them more with salt water, and that seems to really help with their growth. And the ficus and bird of paradise back there are taking over. Here's a top-down view of some of the nicer Monty caps in the tank. There's some nipping damage from the parrotfish, but they grow right back. There's the big Monty that got moved. There's some bubble tip anemones back there that host an Ocellaris clown and 2 Clarkii clowns. Two of the Durasa clams with the new Gygus clam. These Durasas have been able to withstand a lot of picking over the years, but if I put them close to the window, they get picked on pretty bad. Just moving them a little farther back where the fish don't hang out as much really helps with their health. A couple nice chalice corals, kind of hard to view them with the lighting. This is a Magnifica anemone. I think it recently got reclassified in the Stychodactyla, the carpet anemone genus, which is interesting. This is a nicer one. They come in a lot prettier colors than this, but this one has a nice yellow tip. The video doesn't pick it up well, but kind of a lavender base color with a yellow tip. If I darken up the video, it might help a little bit, but kind of hard to capture the real color of this anemone. Even in photos, it doesn't really show up that well. The stylophoras are bouncing back. Sometimes when the salinity gets a little low due to the misting system for the plants and the kalkwasser top off, some of the hard corals take a little bit of a hit, so have to balance that. The Fimbriphilia, I have a hard time saying that new genus, patch back there is huge, probably about 4 or more feet across. Really nice, and it used to be more full, but this tank's really weird in that the water overflows back. There's a manhole back behind that fake brain coral, and then there's pumps that pull from the tank below, and if those pumps shut off, the only thing holding this water back is that sandbar back there. And so the water just starts draining through the sand, and you lose like 6 inches of height, maybe more, until you close a valve down that manhole. And so some of these corals that live near the surface get damaged if there's ever any pump issues or they go off for whatever reason. Luckily there's a backup generator that kicks on most of the time, but if we have to do maintenance on the pumps, it gets a little dicey. Nice Galaxia coral. This Pavona looks like someone's been picking on it a little bit, but it's a resilient coral. These mangroves have mealybugs on them. I'll show some mealybug damage in a little bit, but they're starting to put out a couple new leaves after adjusting the misting system and splashing them more with salt water, so hopefully they'll bounce back. I might have to trim them and make them look a little prettier, but they're starting to do all right. This is a cool plant called Sesuvium I got from Julian Sprung. A nice succulent that grows in salt water. I'm trying to get a few more places of it started. It's been a little slow growing, but it's starting to take off now. And those are a couple black mangroves in the back there. They're also really slow growing, but they're doing all right, so we'll see. Bromeliad back there has a nice inflorescence showing. There's a dead one too, but hopefully we'll get a new plant order this year and I can fill in some of this stuff. These ferns have been attacked by mealybugs recently, all these little white bugs on here. So it's always dicey trying to use insecticides over the coral reef tank. So tried some natural ones, and I haven't seen any ill effects on the corals, so we'll see. But also, these ferns were not a addition on purpose, so they're just a hitchhiker that showed up. So if they come and go, that's fine. There's other plants that'll take their place, but for whatever reason, they seem most susceptible to them and die off the quickest. Some of these corals are getting pretty close to the glass here. I lost 30 pounds in 2020, but I'm still not skinny enough to fit between the glass and the corals, so I recently cleaned a lot of the coralline algae off, but I had to stop here, so I might have to adopt Matt Wandell's magnet method or starve myself, one of the two, but or I could just move them temporarily to clean it. But that's always a chore, keeping the bottom clean and the seam clean. But hopefully I'll get in the tank more now. Another view of the parrotfish. And this sweet lips, this is an oriental sweet lips, is a favorite by a lot of the people who view the tank, but also helps keep the sand bed clean. And without this fish, the sand would probably be covered in diatoms and cyanobacteria, but it constantly sifts the sand. It does dump sand on the corals, but it keeps the sand nice and clean, and it's easy enough to just blow the sand off every once in a while. That emperor angel is really going at that Gygus clam, so I have to keep an eye on that. There's also a unicorn tang in this tank. Oh, there it is. It's the biggest fish in the tank. It's starting to take over. Sometimes these fish get a little too big, and even in this tank, it's about 10,000 gallons display-wise and 20,000-ish overall. Sometimes they have to get pulled out for bigger tanks. Just crazy to think about some of these fish in hobbyist-sized tanks. Here's the midnight snapper. This fish I've featured a lot. It has a really interesting eating habit. Really gulps down the food.